Hi guys, Mindstone here. So, with the release of the Boomsday Project drawing close, I have decided to make a top 3 list for each of the rarities of cards in the new Hearthstone expansion. So I'll be talking about the 3 best commons, the 3 best rares, the 3 best epics, and the 3 best legendaries. And on top of that, I'll be talking about the 3 cards that I think will be very interesting for the new expansion, and potentially could create interesting decks, or at least add decks in interesting ways. So, without further ado, let's jump right into the commons. The common I think will be the third most powerful is War Gear. So War Gear is this 5 mana 5/5 mech which has magnetic. The reason I think it's strong is that putting on it on the board by turn 5 is nice, and magnetizing it to something is really nice. Since you get a lot of punch from that out of nowhere really. So it just seemed really solid. The ability to either go wide, playing it on its own, or going tall, playing it on something. Um, so that's really nice, and I think it's just a all-around solid minion with some good mech synergy. So if mech decks are going to be around, this one's definitely going to be in there, and perhaps even the driving force. Um, yeah, so not flashy in any way, but just solid. Then the common card I think will be the second most impactful is Electro. So Electro is like the worst case is 3 mana 3/3, which is not terrible but not especially good. But the best case is a 3 mana 4/4. And actually, if a deck is built correctly, I think that case will come a lot of the times. Um, Due to it's not very hard to have a 5 cost or more cost spell in your hand at turn 3. So, what you're going to be thinking about is a deck which plays a decent number of these spells will not be happy drawing them early. Uh, because that's going to mean they have less cards in their hand to be playing. So, this one sort of well makes that disadvantage less, well, it's less bad now due to that you get an overstated minion on turn 3, right? And for tempo decks, I think this is great. I think if you compare it to Hench Clan Thug, it's just nice being able to put a 3 mana 4/4 on the board. Hench Clan Thug's even better, right? In Rogue mainly. So, but this one just seems solid in general, in my opinion. So, it's a card that hasn't had a lot of attention, and I think that's because people are having a hard time seeing which decks it fits into. But I just think it's solid because you can play it in, say, Big Mage, and it's fine, and you can play it in Druid, which has tons of big spells, and that's fine too. So really, there's a lot of opportunities, and I think it's going to be a strong card um, when we see the set launch. Now, for the best common in the set, and I think there's no dispute that this is Biology Project. And to really see why Biology Project is so good, I think we have to look at what it actually does. So first of all, it's a 1 mana. Both players gain 2 mana crystals. So since this effect is obviously symmetrical, you have to pay for it. That would leave the druid at a disadvantage. However, there's that druid actually benefits very much from having more mana, so that's really nice for them. And I could talk a lot about the implications of mana to cards and how that interacts and why this is actually really good. Um, but I'll skip that for now and just say that this is really nice for the druid. And on top of that, playing it will gain you 1 mana right off the bat, since it's not empty mana crystals. It gives you so it's actually like an innovate with ramp potential, which is super strong. I see it going into just about any druid archetype that cares about ramp. So everything which is not spiteful druid, or token druid, even token druid actually, perhaps. Um, so yeah, it just seems solid. It's like by a wide margin, it's probably the best common in the expansion. Yeah, but that being said, I think I'll just have an honorable mention for this list. The Topsy Turvy priest card could have gone here too. I think it could be really powerful in the right setting in the priest deck, but I'm a little bit unsure about it because I think the combo Topsy Turvy decks get a little bit sketchy. so I'm not sure it's going to fit in there, even though it's a very flexible card. Well, I know Topsy Turvy is going to go in the decks, but I don't know if the decks are going to be very strong, because I don't feel like Topsy Turvy solves their issues. It's just another way to combo for those Inner Fire Priest combo decks. Yeah, but with that being said, I'll move on to the rares. So the third best rare, I believe, will be Voltaic Burst. This Shaman spell is sort of really powerful in my opinion, because played on turn 1, it's a very, very strong present you get, and played anywhere later, it's still nice because these sparks have rush, so you can get them instantly utilized. Apart from that, it's also that if you have Flame Tongue Totem out, they just become monstrous, since you can, well, trade them away for 2 really strong attacks for almost no mana. I think turn 3 Voltaic Burst and Flame Tongue Totem is going to be super insane. Now, there's that fact that you have Overload on the card, which is a fairly big, well, problem for it, but I think it's still very, very strong. If the Overload was not really a thing, I would suppose the card was a lot stronger. But again, I don't think it matters very much. It might even be a benefit to some decks, since we have cards that trigger off Overload. Yeah, it's definitely going to be played in something like Token Shaman or, well, yeah, aggressive Shaman decks that can play odd cards. Then we've got the second most powerful rare in the expansion, which is another Shaman card, Storm Chaser. So Storm Chaser is really solid because it has pretty decent stats, and it draws a card. So the stats are good for a card that draws a card, I'm saying. And even it costs 4, and you draw a 5 or more cost spell. So that's really a nice curve, really. And also, the 5 spells that Shaman can put in their deck are pretty good. Volcano is nice. Eureka, the new 6 mana spell, is probably going to be pretty nice too. Spellstone would be fine too. And, well, I believe there's another one that oh, Bloodlust, yeah. So, there's even another one, I believe. Yeah, the Shaman Legendary spell. But all these spells, however good they are and whatever, the Storm Chaser is nice because you can help tutor them out. So putting not all of them in your deck, but just a few of them, it's going to mean that you know exactly what you're getting off Storm Chaser. So that's really powerful, and it's going to help the game plan for a lot of decks, whether it's control or aggro. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a really powerful card, and even the elemental tag's going to add to it, since it might even be played in some sort of elemental shaman, I guess. Yeah, but I think the rare card, which is going to be the best in the expansion, is going to be Necrium Blade, actually, which is a rogue weapon. So I think this weapon is super bonkers because it's really well statted for the cost, similar to Eaglehorn Bow and Inferior War Axe. But I think the effect is really, it's definitely as good as these others. Since triggering death rattle of one of your minions can be super powerful, consider triggering Blood Mage Thanos for drawing a card. Already there, the weapon's just super above the roof. And it doesn't even stop there. If you can trigger something like a Cube or a Karen Bloodhoof, you're going to be so well going on value. So I think the card is just disgustingly good. And you can even play it without triggering a death rattle, and it's still completely fine. So definitely a card to watch out for, and I think it's going to be most likely a stable in a lot of rogue, well, maybe not a lot of rogue decks, but a few rogue decks at this point. Perhaps even something that you need to build your deck around. Yeah, with that being said, there's also the Gatling Inventor, which I considered putting on this list, because it seems like one of these 5-drops that are just super good and could fit in a lot of decks. I decided not to put it there because I feel like the 5-drops already in the game, Fungalmancer and Cobalt Scalesbane, are really solid, so there might not be a lot of room to play Gatling Inventor as well. But it's definitely a card worth experimenting with. Now, going over to the epics, I am going to say that the third best epic of the set must be Thunderhead. So this Shaman 4-cost 3/5 minion seems really solid to me because it reminds me a lot of Violet Teacher. Just with that, it'll trigger off overload cards instead of spells. While most things this is going to be triggering off will be spells, and it's going to trigger less than Violet Teacher in a way then. It's still really powerful because it triggers with more than double the power, you could say, since you're not only getting one minion, but you get two of them and they have rush. So that's really powerful. If we consider Voltaic Burst previously, which was essentially 2 mana, well, 1 mana and a little bit more due to Overload 1, this is like 2 mana well, it's a Voltaic Burst every time it triggers, which seems really strong actually. It's a threat which actually has to be cleared to not go out of control. And talking about how good Voltaic Burst was, I think that this one will also be very solid, due to it essentially doing the same thing. You're going to have to build a deck a little bit around it, but I don't think it's going to be hard slapping in a few Lightning Bolt and Snaps to make this really solid. You might even see something like Violet Teacher and Thunderhead decks, even though I'm a little bit doubtful of that. So, that being said, it's obviously also an elemental, so I might see some play in strange elemental shaman decks, which could actually be pretty exciting. Yeah, I've got the second best epic of the set, which is Unexpected Results. And this is certainly unexpected, I think, because there's almost been no focus on this card. Nonetheless, I think its power is not well apparent really, because when you think of this card, it's not really amazing just playing it on turn 4. Of course, it's decent, but in no way amazing. Comparing it to the old Call to Arms, which summoned 3 2-cost minions for an even paladin, it's not as strong as that. Definitely not. Since, well, you're not going to choose which 2-drops you get, but you're still going to get, well, random ones, so something average, maybe a 2/2 or whatever. But getting 2 of those seems pretty nice. But the power of the spell does not come from that you can summon 2 average 2-drops. It comes from all the synergy that Mage has. Mana Worms love this card because it's a 4-drop while powering up Mana Worms. Sorcerer's Apprentice makes this card absolutely busted because you can play it 1 turn earlier. And even better than that is that if you get spell damage from one of the new spell damage cards or from Downlaws or whatever, it also goes super busted, being able to summon higher cost minions instead of the ones that you currently summon. So I could definitely see this fit into some tempo or aggro mage as a very solid 4-drop actually. Yeah, so while not flashy, I think it's going to be solid. The random outcomes are going to be a little bit harsh because Doomsayers are obviously a possibility, but it's still probably going to be a solid card in my opinion. Probably one of the best. Yeah. With that being said, the best epic I think from the set is going to be Crystallizer. Crystallizer's a weird card really because you would think that the effect did nothing, but essentially you should think of it as converting health into armor. That's really useful for all the classes that have healing, for Warlock because they like to take damage, they just wish to take more damage, and for Warrior since they love armor. So this conversion is super powerful for all these classes, and the body of the Crystallizer is solid, a 1/3, so for 1. And that's just overall a strong package, and I think it's going to be seen in, well, a lot of decks. It's even been proven that something like Zulok or Odd Paladin play 1/3s just for being 1/3s in the past. So I could definitely imagine this being one of those, since the effect is actually an upside. Now, I'm also going to mention the card Prismatic Lens, which is something I also consider putting on the list, because the effect seems very powerful. The draw 2 cards and spell the minion and swap their costs for 4 mana. That's nice, right? Because drawing 2 cards for 4 mana is not terrible. It's not good either, but it's okay. And swapping their costs might just make the one super insane and the other terrible. But that just means you draw one super insane card for 4 mana, which is pretty decent. The other card can come out later then. But just say being able to play Dino Size for 2 mana is pretty damn bunkers. So I could definitely see this card seeing a lot of play, but it really depends upon the decks that can be built around it. Which is the reason I'm a little bit skeptical, because I feel like it's going to be hard building a deck that really utilizes this effect fully. Yeah, but with that being said, it's probably going to be an interesting card, at least. Yeah. Now, moving on to the legendaries, I think the third most powerful legendary of the set is going to be Forbidden's Floop, the Druid legendary. So this card's been super hyped up, and rightly so, because it's a super strong card. Since you can copy a lot of interesting minions with it, say Malygos or Hadronox, well, Lich King, you say, or whatever. There's a lot of good possibilities there, and I think it's probably going to see a lot of play in combo Druid decks. However, it has some weaknesses too that you kind of need to wait for your mana to ramp up before you can play it. That's not a big problem for Druid, but it's still a problem since you're clocking up your hand until then. And secondly, you can't play it with recruiting decks since something like Master O card or Oaken Summons would summon this. So that's really annoying. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to play with the Master O card entirely, because both of those cards are so good in Druid that I think there's just going to be, you're going to have to slap them in the same deck and then just live with the anti-synergy. But still, I think Forbidden's Floop is a super, super strong legendary. And it'll definitely go in a lot of decks. Now, the second most powerful legendary, I think, is the Solarium, which is the Warlock legendary spell. So, the Solarium is interesting in a way, since you're not going to be playing it in anything but Sulok. So, why is it then powerful? It's not very flexible in that record, really. And what you should see it as is simply that drawing 3 extra cards and playing them in a turn is really nice when you're top decking, and Sulok is often top decking. So that will make their late game a lot more threatening, which just seems to be strong, honestly. It just seems like a card that's definitely going to find a home in Sulok, especially if you're going to be searching for that last Soulfire or Leroy to finish off a game. There's a little bit of disadvantages to the Solarium though, which means that it's not going to go higher in the rating, for my opinion. Since that you need to be at a fairly high mana total to be able to play it. I think you'd want to be at 5 or 6 mana at least to play the Solarium. But of course, it can also just be played sort of like a tracking. That's definitely a possibility. Since drawing 3 cards and discarding all of them but the one you chose to play is essentially what Hunter does when they play tracking. So in that way, I see it as sort of an improved tracking. Now, that being said, it's only it goes in Sulok, and if you can't play all the minions, it's going to be annoying to discard them. But nonetheless, it's going to be strong in Sulok, I believe. Yeah. So, but the most powerful legendary of the set, in my opinion, is going to be Electrostorm Surge. It just seems that this card is going to fit in just about any Shaman deck and be strong there. Worst case is something like the coin, right? And that's still good. Then Electro becomes 2 mana, 3/3, which is super solid, and it's something you would play in just about every single deck I can imagine. So, there's probably no reason to play Electrostorm Surge in a Shaman deck in the next, well, year and a half, it seems. And therefore, I think she's just hands down the most powerful legend of the set. Hitting something like Farsight or Volcano or Lightning Storm with it is just going to be bonkers. So, beyond doubt, a very strong legendary. Honorable mentions goes to Stargaze Luna, which is a card that I think fits super nicely into some aggressive or tempo-based mage. Since, yeah, getting that draw engine seems solid. It's a card that must be dealt with, and I think, well, without doing more analysis upon it, that it's going to be a solid choice for those decks, since it is a threat that just must be handled. And these aggressive tempo mages often pack a lot of threats, so simply just making the enemy not being able to answer all of them will often make the game spiral out of control very fast. Yeah. With that being said, I just want to talk about 3 more cards that I think are interesting, but perhaps not deserving of a top position in the ratings. So the first card is Weapons Project. Weapons Project is a card that will go exclusively in Control Warrior. But in Control Warrior, it seems to be very powerful, given the right circumstances, since you can override enemy weapons with it. That's nice. Giving enemies armor is not relevant to Control Warrior. They don't care about that. So the card becomes a lot stronger in that context. And if it's played with weapon removal, such as Harrison or Glutinous Ooze, it becomes, well, sort of an advantage to you, because you can draw cards or gain a lot of armor, while gaining weapons and armor yourself for only 2 mana. So the card just seems to have a lot of synergy with that, and I would not be surprised to see this played in Control Warrior. Actually, I would be very surprised to not see it played in Control Warrior. While I don't know if 2 copies would be warranted, I think that is not completely out of the question. With that being said, moving over to the next interesting card, I think Juicy Psyche Melon is also very interesting. So Druids are not really unhappy about a tutor card in this sort. It's 4 mana, draw 4 cards in the best case scenario, even though that is not terribly likely to happen. Even so, paying 4 mana to draw 2 cards, which is fairly likely to happen, might just be good if those cards are combo pieces that you absolutely need to have in your hand. And for Druid, it seems that this is often the case. Drawing, say, your Master O card, or well, perhaps your Malios, or your not Kun Aviana Malio, or, well, your, what is it called? Talkwaggle and Asalina, there we go. I'm talking about standard, not wild now, I suppose. With a single card is really nice. The only problem with the card right now is that UI isn't standard, so UI serves as just draw your entire deck, sort of, which means that you don't really need Juicy Psyche Melon. However, I could see some decks cutting a single UI for Juicy Psyche Melon if they need tutoring more than they need, well, drawing a lot of cards, and also that in a lot of decks it feels like UI is super heavy and it's a little bit clunky to work with. Nonetheless, Juicy Psyche Melon is definitely interesting, and I would like to see the decks that use it, simply because it's going to be a deck building challenge, as of sorts at least, to try to make it consistent. And as a final note, you're never putting 2 of these in a deck, because that would mean playing way too many high cost cards. Yeah. With that being said, the third card on my interesting card list is Eureka. So the Shaman Spell. I think this spell is really interesting, because it sort of makes you play more big minions in some Shaman deck, while also being able to cheat them out really nicely. That combination just becomes really scary for both combo Shamans such as Melios Shaman and Wall Shaman. And overall, I think that might just enable an archetype or 2. So that's definitely also a card to watch out for. But with all this being said, I think I've talked enough about the cards, and I hope you guys are as excited about them as I am. I, for one, will definitely be trying to make all sorts of weird and wonky decks with these cards as soon as they release. Yeah, but I hope you enjoyed my little review of the cards here, and I will see you in my next video.